Caitlin Clark may be the most polarizing athlete of this century, at least in American sports. The former Iowa Buckeyes superstar has been in the spotlight for the past few weeks like no other female basketball player has ever been. And while it's true that most basketball fans agree that she has a unique opportunity to transcend the sport, there are also those who kind of disagree. In fact, fellow WNBA players, don't have as much faith in her dominance as everybody else. Or at least they don't have confidence in her immediate impact, let's say. Many people have talked about this situation in which some of the best players in the history of an expanding league have shown their skepticism about Clark. But why is this happening? Why is it that NBA players are able to understand what Caitlin can mean to the game, while some WNBA players don't seem to be ready to accept that? Well, there's actually a reason. So let's talk about it. Quick fact, Stephen Curry shot 10.3 three-pointers per game in his sophomore year at Davidson in what was considered an unprecedented season from an unprecedented prospect. Clark, in her senior season at Iowa, has shot 13.6 threes per game. She's the best shooter in the history of college, period. That's the first thing to make clear. Caitlin Clark's performance was not a fluke. She's just like that. That's her. All the scouts agreed that she was the best player in her entire class by far. That's the reason that in professional basketball, her expectations are as high as they've been in her senior year at Iowa. It's only been a few days since Clark was drafted first overall by the Indiana Fever, and once again, her name has been all over the place.
The Indiana Fever select Caitlin Clark, University of Iowa.
And one of the reasons is her contract. Caitlin has signed with Indiana her first professional basketball contract in which she will receive a total of $338,000 for the next 4 years. A pretty low amount for an athlete of her reputation, which has been much talked about in recent days, partly because of the big differences that exist with the salary scale of the rookies in the NBA. However, you can't really deny the math. The WNBA is a league that generates a much smaller amount of revenue each season. And in fact, Clark is going to earn the same ratio of salary as an NBA rookie in respect to the total league earnings. But even if there is a salary gap in North American basketball, Caitlin is going to be one of the exceptions. Let me explain. Clark is set to sign a new Nike deal valued at $28 million, a figure that equals the annual salary of one of the 50 highest paid players in the NBA. In fact, players like Julius Randle, Jalen Brunson, DeJounte Murray, or Draymond Green signed contracts for an annual value less than that amount. True, the $28 million will be divided over the next 8 seasons, but even so, the $3.5 million Clark will get from the sponsorship is equivalent to 40 times her WNBA salary. And Under Armour made her an offer of $16 million for 4 years that she could have accepted, but the guard decided to go with Nike's great legacy instead. Still, her sponsorship is only one of Caitlin's sources of income. The truth is, she has received even more lucrative offers from other platforms. Ice Cube's Big Three made her a tremendously tempting offer. The value? Well, at first there was speculation of $5 million in exchange for the guard to participate in the competition that lasts just 2 months. But with shares and a portion of the merchandising profits, this value could have reached $15 million. Unheard of figures for a women's basketball player, by the way. And surprisingly, Caitlin, after thinking about it, turned it down. All because the competition would take place during the dates when she will be in Paris representing Team USA at the Olympic Games. For her, basketball is above money, but still, some WNBA players showed some envy, let's say. Let me explain. Lexi Brown spoke on Gilbert Arenas' podcast about the contract Ice Cube offered Clark. Well, if Lexi had known that the contract was actually worth triple the money, it might have made her feel even worse.
You offered the contract to a player who's not yet even in the WNBA. That doesn't make sense.
That's true.
And in a way, I kind of get it, to be honest. WNBA players have been trying for their entire careers to expand the image of their league and have fought for salary equity, and now a 22-year-old girl is multiplying her income exponentially without having played a single game in professional basketball. In this podcast, Lexi talked about exactly that too. And that's precisely the second reason why WNBA players are uncomfortable with Caitlin's arrival to elite basketball.
I think he's trying to make a business decision, which he's a businessman. That makes sense. But to mask it in this I want to uplift and support WNBA players and women athletes.
And not only have the league's legends been a little late for the potential expansion train that is going to inevitably improve the league's revenue numbers, a Clark-driven train, by the way, that could elevate the WNBA to a status it has yet to reach. But besides that, the legacy of all the legends of the league are also in jeopardy. I mean, imagine if a prospect so incredible came into the NBA that he threatened to completely change the game. A player so dominant that he would be able to change the course of the league, and at times his skill set would seem unfair to the rest of the players. A player that would change the concept of what it means to be the best of all time. A player that would threaten the legacy of all the players who came before him. Yes, Victor Wembanyama may have the potential to do that, but if there has been one player in league history capable of posing such a threat, it's been Michael Jordan. That's Caitlin's ceiling. That's the aura she's starting to transmit. The Indiana guard has a unique opportunity. Very few prospects have come into the league with a goal as impossible as becoming the best player in history. But for Clark, these exceptions somehow seem realistic, and her ability to score from anywhere on the court is reminiscent of only one player, and that is Stephen Curry.
Her range, her three-point shooting overall, her flair for testing her range every night and knowing that the other team's going to try to take it away, and she's fearless.
And I get it, the league's legends, they feel threatened by losing their prominence, but they don't realize that Caitlin means so much more to women's basketball. Clark's record-breaking numbers are building a huge platform for the WNBA. If Ice Cube is offering $15 million in exchange for a player to play in their 2-month competition, it's because there's a huge audience that wants to see what she's capable of. The league could and will take advantage of this factor, increasing its revenues thanks to a generational player. Everyone wants to see her immediate impact on the league. Everyone wants to see her trajectory. And it's time for all players to jump on the bandwagon, honestly. And instead of taking advantage of it, some of them are more concerned about their own ego. But this is something that happens when we talk about an athlete who can transcend the sport. It's just the price she has to pay. Now, the history of the WNBA is much shorter than that of the NBA. Since the league was created in 1996, there have been many players of enormous talent, players who broke many barriers to get there, and should not be forgotten. But just as the NBA managed to go global almost 40 years after its creation with the arrival of Michael Jordan and the golden era of the 90s, its analog could do the same with Caitlin. Because the reality is, it's not just her. Since Sabrina Ionescu, the audience for women's college basketball has grown exponentially. But this season has reached an all-time high. It's not just Caitlin. Angel Reese, Cameron Brink, Paige Beckers, Juju Watkins. The upcoming generation is going to be historic. These girls are famous before they even make it to the pros, and people are waiting to see what they're capable of. The 2020s in the WNBA could be the equivalent of the 90s in the NBA, and that's the best thing that could happen to women's sports. But when you feel such a big threat, the first thing you do is try to downplay it, right? Diana Taurasi is a player whose career is full of milestones. She's one of the best players ever, if not the best, and even she feels the fear. In her mind, Caitlin Clark is no different than any other talented prospect who's made it to the WNBA.
You look superhuman playing against 18-year-olds, but you're going to come with some grown women that have been playing professional basketball for a long time.
She's another potential superstar who will have to earn her respect in senior basketball, and she's in for a reality check when she turns pro. But deep down, Diana knows it. She knows the threat Caitlin poses to eclipse all that she has accomplished. But let's be clear, this is not unique to women's basketball. In the NBA, players go through a similar process. No one respects rookies until they earn respect on the court. It's something we've seen with every superstar in history. No one takes you seriously if you're not able to elevate your team to contender status. And sometimes, even that doesn't help. In that respect, both leagues are similar, but the real reason WNBA players aren't able to appreciate Clark in a different opinion than NBA legends who can only speak well of her is context, really. The key is a fact we've given before. The men's league was founded in 1946. The WNBA 50 years later in 1996. A longer history. That's it. That's the reason. The NBA has lived through dozens of different generations at this point, different eras. You know there's always going to be a new generational player coming along that's going to turn the league upside down. When Wilt dominated, everybody thought there would never be a better player, but along came Bill Russell in his 11 rings. Then came Bird, Jordan, Magic, and everyone thought the NBA had reached its peak. The league was finally being exported all over the world and its market became global. The greatness and aura of the 90s seemed unattainable. But the current generation has proven that no team could win 6 rings today. It is the era of perfection. The slightest mistake and you're out of the championship race. Players as talented as LeBron, Durant, or Curry have won rings, but they haven't formed dynasties as long-lasting and intense as the Bulls. And yet, after forming an unrepeatable generation that has dominated more than a decade, it may be eclipsed by a French center who has come to change basketball forever. Who knows? Victor Wembanyama is the latest case that proves the fact that there will always be a threat. There's always going to be a player who threatens to change the direction of the league. That's the reason why NBA legends have understood what Clark means. They've witnessed the story many times, and they know that Caitlin is their female Michael Jordan. She's the first player who has the opportunity to take the American product outside of the United States, as he did in the 1990s. She has the opportunity to transcend the sport, as some of the best athletes in history have done before her. And if all goes according to plan, Clark will be the one to mark a before and after in the history of women's basketball. All right, that's it for this one. Let us know what you thought down in the comments. Like, subscribe, share. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.